Hello, this is Mike Fish, and we are on lesson 5 of section 1 on our short-term rental training. And section 1 is about evaluating a property for potential short-term rental income. And today we're going to talk real briefly about the property itself, the house, the condition of the house. Now, some of this is very industry standard. When you're looking at a house, you want to get a good inspection. You want to know what you're getting into. But I will tell you, after managing close to about 4,000 bookings over an 8-year period, uh, the the house, there are certain things that people who book these vacation homes are more sensitive to than an individual person might be. So, of course, the condition of the roof and the siding and all that, is important. For reviews, let's talk about how some of these other things do tend to affect reviews and in the end, profitability. Because we live or die off of the reviews. I'm proud to say after 5 years of the new brokerage we have here, still at a 4.9, for example, on Airbnb. So we work very, very hard, and a big part of that has to do with the home, of course, or it feels like everything we're doing is basically fighting against bad reviews because of the condition of the house. So let's talk about some of those issues. One is the windows. The windows really do need to be in decent enough condition that they can open them. The screens have to be good. Even if you got AC in the summer, particularly in the spring, the fall, people want to open those windows, so they have to be in working condition. I would say the two areas that have to be very clean, like they don't have to be fancy to have a successful VRBO, depending on the amenities and how it's managed and marketed, but the kitchen and the bathroom have to be in good enough condition and working order that they look clean. You'd be amazed. I probably had, countless comments over properties I managed over the years, going back several years, because things like the finishings of the shower, for example, or the baseboards didn't look clean, when the fact is they just needed to be repainted or redone. So looking at that kitchen, looking at the bathrooms in particular, saying if these are pristine, do they look pristine? That's where the finishings get pretty important. Another thing I want to mention is decks and railings. Now, if we're getting the state lodging permit, we're looking at those railings and making sure that the railings are safe. They've got to be 4.5 inches or less, down the railings. So making sure that everything is safe in the house, the decks outside, of course, and everything in the house as far as the railings, or we're getting those repaired, before we have an inspection or go live. If you intend to have an area of hanging out downstairs, a family room, bedrooms, the moisture level is something to be particularly concerned about. I have seen $5,000 refunds because people showed up in August at a house and went, it smells like mold, I can't sleep here, and freaked out and left. I've seen it. So there are those properties that we've got the dehumidifiers going, we're fighting against that musty smell. It's an important consideration. The smell is very hit or miss with guests, and some guests are overly sensitive to a moisture smell, and they freak out. And of course, it's going to be black mold, and everybody's going to be sick, etc. So, something to be extra cautious of if you're looking to VRBO a property is that moisture level in the basement, and does it create a smell of any kind? Of course, the HVAC, the big thing is no matter what you do in your marketing, you've got to have good air conditioning. We have a company we work with where we have put in many mini splits. AC heat mini splits are super efficient, but if you don't have good air conditioning and you don't have good heat, that's something that we've got to be extra cautious of as we're looking at a VRBO property. So many of these properties and cabins up here have baseboard heating, and in-floor heating can also be an issue, because are you going to leave it, all winter long at 70 degrees? If it's empty for a week, and then you don't have it at 70 degrees, you turned it down to 50, then you got to crank it up and you're looking at, 12 hours for that in-floor heat to heat up. And who's going to do it? We're going to hire somebody, have an extra housekeeper, make an extra trip out there to turn up the in-floor heat a day before the guests get there. So, I've got properties that are very successful with in-floor heat. They can be a real hassle. I've got properties that are successful with the electric baseboard, but normally we like to see some type of additional heat with it. And there's multiple options when it comes to them, at least putting extra heat in the bedrooms if you just got baseboard heat. So you don't want the baseboard electric heat at 70 all the time. And again, you've got to either send somebody to crank up the heat, hours before the guests get there or a day before the guests get there, or you've got to give them some way to crank up that furnace and get that heat going, or AC, depending on the season. So just something to consider. Water pressure can be another big one. The plumbing conditions. We've had properties that have low water pressure, old plumbing, and absolutely that shows up in the reviews. So you do want to be careful of that. I work with a very good HVAC plumbing company, and sometimes they'll come in and they'll redo the plumbing for various reasons, including water pressure. The shower heads have to be pretty much new. They have to be pristine. That's what people expect when they're doing a VRBO. High traffic areas, with carpet, flooring, they've got to be done durable, especially if you're going to have pets and animals in there. You've got to realize that if you're going to run a successful VRBO and you're running 200 people a year through that property, you've got to consider that, the wear and tear of that type of traffic. And so the type of flooring is certainly a consideration, and the condition of it. I have seen people demand refunds and complaints over a ripped carpet, or an issue with the flooring or the baseboards. Especially if you're going to get up into that 500, 600, 700, 800 a night plus range. These guests have expectations. We have people that can come in and put the lipstick on, and etc. But these are considerations, and it really depends on the guests. There are some guests that they could care less what the place looks like, but again, that is not the norm. It's got to at least look very clean, regardless of how you market it on the front end. And for many guests, the condition of the property does make a difference. And I would love to say, hey, can't you just have a good time, even though this, the baseboards need to be repainted, or this or that or the other. But it is absolutely a factor when you're considering doing a VRBO. Water quality is something that a lot of people don't think about. We have guests come up here that have never used well water before. I have had people over the years claim they got sick, demand refunds, leave horrible reviews because the water is a little bit yellow. So I will tell you, nowadays when I work with an owner, we really require good filtration and an osmosis system under the sink. If the water is at all questionable, you really want to make sure that it's dealt with correctly. That can be, depending on the property, that can be a $5,000 to $12,000 plus fix. So the water quality is something to be to make sure that's on your radar as you're looking at these properties. And then even inside and outside, you're looking at making sure that everything is safe. Sometimes people will bring their great grandma and they'll complain because the sidewalk's uneven, or there's a step uneven, etc. So those things are things that many people can overlook when looking at a lake home, because they're up there to be on the lake. And I will say that there's definitely a difference between your average group coming in July than coming in September or October. That being said, these are obviously issues looking at any lake home, but these are a few things to be extra cognitive of when you're considering doing a VRBO. Are you going to find a place that these are the things I've mentioned are all taken care of, or are you going to figure that you're going to get those taken care of before you go live with a VRBO? I'd love to say it's a great idea to have a vacation home that's a work in progress, and I've done that many times with owners. I've gone through that journey, but the truth is you really want your first 50 reviews to be 5 stars, rather than have not perfect reviews the first year or two, and then try and build back after that. It's always easier to spend the money when the money comes in, but if you're looking at a VRBO, the longer I've done this, the more I've realized that you really want to you have a good understanding of how these issues affect reviews and short-term rentals, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can up front, whether it's the property you're buying or the property you're fixing up, to make sure that these issues are where they need to be before you go live. So reach out anytime. Again, this is Mike Fish with Minnesota Real Estate and Management, and this video is really focusing folks on the condition of the house, which again is important for any buy, but understanding how the condition of the house can affect the success of a short-term rental is something that you need to consider if you're looking again to purchase or have a current place that you're looking to VRBO. So reach out anytime. I sure appreciate your time.